Welcome to True Crime Boss. I'm Jarrett Ferrantino. We didn't ask for it, and we may be getting it. A sequel to the Murdaugh trial. Fireworks, explosions, a lot of noise out of South Carolina this week. Alec Murdaugh's lawyer, Dick Harpootlian, and Jim Griffin have filed a bombshell of a motion in their appeal in the South Carolina Court of Appeals. They have accused the Clerk of Courts, Becky Hill, of interfering with the jury. Folks, I can't explain or quantify effectively how significant this motion could be. The accusations, and again, at this point, they are only accusations, and we're going to break them down. If proven in court, don't allow Alec Murdaugh to walk out of his jail cell a free man. But they could mean another trial. If it felt like a long trial the first time, if it felt like it was a lot of emotion, if it felt like it was a lot of litigation, imagine having to go through it again. And that is exactly what Harpootlian and his team are asking for. They're asking for a new trial based on what they claim were Becky Hill's totally inappropriate conduct in handling the jury. Who's Becky Hill and what did she do? Becky Hill is the elected clerk of courts in South Carolina where the Murdaugh trial was conducted. She essentially is in charge of that jury when they come in every day and when they leave every day. She makes sure they get their food. She makes sure they're secured and sequestered from the rest of the public and the parties and the litigants in the case. That is her job. That is essentially her job in a major trial like this. She's also, as part of her job, is in charge of putting together the jury pools and the jury panels. How juries are selected is through that system of jury pooling and jury paneling. That's part of her job as well. She's an elected official. She is accused of having inappropriate conversations with members of the jury. 4 affidavits are attached to the motion that's pending right now. The major accusations are this. Basically, Becky Hill is said to have told members of the jury, don't be fooled by the defense. She attacked the credibility of Alec Murdaugh and said, watch his body language. Folks, those are major missteps on her part if they're true. She also, on August 1st, released a book about her role in this case. Curious and suspicious for someone who's working under the auspices of the court, now issuing a book. Her job is to literally be a potted plant, folks. She should have no opinion on the litigants, the guilt or innocence of a case, or anything. The judge, her job is to make sure people don't say those things to the jury, and she's accused of doing it herself. Could you imagine Creighton Waters, the prosecutor who successfully prosecuted Alec Murdaugh, hearing these allegations? He must want to strangle her if they're true, because he's going to have to do all of this again. A bad sequel. And let me tell you something, folks. If this case has to be retried, the advantages to the defense are significant. They know what every witness is going to say. They know what every bit of evidence the prosecution intends to present is going to look like. They can adapt their theory in front of a new jury. But before we get there, what do we have to do? There's a couple of things that have already happened. Number one, Dick Harpootlian has asked that the United States Attorney in South Carolina open an investigation into Becky Hill and her conduct as alleged. A significant move. Harpootlian went on to say he didn't ask SLED or local sheriffs to investigate this because he has said he wants people with no connection to Murdaugh, no connection to Hill. He wants the United States Attorney in that district doing that. Folks, I have spent a significant amount of time in South Carolina. Many of you may know I represented the Drexel family, particularly Dawn Drexel, the mother of Brittany Drexel. This is hard hat football in South Carolina, let me tell you, folks. And the people involved here are very powerful in that state. Harpootlian is doing the right thing by asking the United States Attorney to be the ones to make that inquiry. However, in addition to that, he's asking for an evidentiary hearing. They're going to come back to court, ladies and gentlemen, and bring jurors who were in the jury box just a little bit over to the witness box. This is not a good situation. And now jurors are going to be put under oath and questioned. What did Ms. Hill do, if anything? And if she did do these things, what impact did her statements have on the outcome of this case? Now, one of the major questions you have to ask yourself, and I know you may be sitting there and saying, Murdaugh is guilty. Okay, folks, this isn't about Murdaugh's guilt or innocence and whether or not he killed Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh. This is now the system on trial. This has nothing to do with how you feel about Alec Murdaugh, because now the entire system is on trial if Harpootlian and Griffin get their way. Basically, the standard that's going to be applied, one of the big things in appeals, and the question that's often asked is, if this particular witness testified, if this particular piece of evidence was admitted in court, would it have changed the outcome of the trial? That's a very high standard. And in this case, you can imagine it is a very high standard. But that's not the standard in play here. The question that's going to be asked of Judge Newman or whoever is going to preside over this case, because now Judge Newman may become a witness himself. This is the standard. And this is, if you get anything from this particular episode, the standard is, was the incident prejudicial to the defendant? Folks, South Carolina appeals law says there should be no communication between court officials and jurors about a case. Literally, it should be limited to what time are we starting tomorrow? Things of the procedural nature. When you start discussing the merits and the proceedings, I promise you, it is assumed that it had a detrimental impact on the defense. And this hearing is going to happen. And I'm not saying it guarantees that Alec Murdaugh gets a second trial, but this came out of left field, folks. And everything Creighton Waters and his team did in building their case with surgical precision, making sure his team didn't speak out of school, didn't violate the gag order, is now up for grabs and in jeopardy because of what Becky Hill may have done. Folks, I've done high-profile trials. I've been part of high-profile cases in South Carolina. And I'm going to tell you, I've seen people do stupid shit under these lights. I've seen them make bad decisions. I've seen them step out and step on others in an effort to gain their own notoriety. I've seen it happen. And it is not far out of character to take an elected official like Becky Hill, and when she has her moment in the sun, she steps out too far and flies too close to the sun. And that's exactly what she's accused of doing. So what's next for Low Country? What is this going to look like? I'm going to tell you, having been on these front lines, Creighton Waters, despite pulling his hair out at this point, has to figure out, what the hell do we do now? First, he has to respond to this motion in writing. Okay? Before that happens, you can bet his team of investigators are going to interview those jurors that completed affidavits that are attached to the defense's motion for a new trial. So they're going to have the opportunity to interview these folks to ensure that Harpootlian and his team didn't put words in their mouth, didn't intimidate them in any way. Harpootlian and Griffin were on the steps, literally on the steps of the South Carolina Court of Appeals when they dropped this motion. And they detailed how they drove Harpootlian's Mercedes. He's a character, that guy. I gotta tell you how he drove his Mercedes through the dirt roads of Low Country, interviewing these jurors. It sounds like there's a book in the works there too. But he talks about their hesitancy in coming forward. Some of them. He talked about a whisper campaign that began and grew louder when Hill's book came out. And then he met with some of the jurors. They provided these affidavits. There's 4 in total. 2 are signed by jurors who are identified only by their jury number, and then 2 are unsigned. Harpootlian even went on to say why 2 of them are unsigned. So the prosecution obviously wants to talk to all of these jurors, and they're going to have to defend the actions of Hill. So we can expect, if this evidentiary hearing takes place, that the prosecution is going to be asking questions like, did you follow the judge's instruction? If Ms. Hill had a conversation with you, did it influence you in any way? Was the statement, if a statement was made by Ms. Hill, detrimental to your ability to consider the evidence in that courtroom or follow the instructions of the judge and balance the rights of everyone involved? If the answer to those questions by those jurors is, I was able to do my job honestly as a juror despite what was said by Ms. Hill, then I think this case may be safe. If the answers of those jurors are Ms. Hill's statements about the credibility of the defense and certain observations about the defendant impacted me, then we could have a major problem in Low Country. And it may not seem, to those of you looking at this and listening and watching, and say, but Jared, what the hell is the big deal? Someone said something to a juror. You have to realize something. Becky Hill is the clerk of courts. She is a state actor. She is imbued by a juror and from a juror's perspective with the power of government and the power of the court. Her opinion should in no way factor into that jury deliberation room. The opinions in that room are the opinions and the sentiments of the jurors. To have someone with the power of the state behind them saying anything to influence that decision is a significant, significant problem. The other thing is, and Dick Harpootlian talked about the Sixth Amendment. Folks, we hear about the Second Amendment, First Amendment a lot. Sixth is something in your everyday life you may not hear a great deal about. Essentially, the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution allows for us and every citizen of this country to confront any witness against us, accusing us of a crime. It's called the Confrontation Clause. You hear cross-examination and confrontation. The defense, who undoubtedly worked their asses off in defending Alec Murdaugh, whether you think he's guilty or not, did not have the opportunity to challenge this unfettered state actor who was assessing the credibility of their client and imposing her opinion upon a jury. And folks, that is a significant, significant development. It's something that could put this whole case in jeopardy. The last thing Creighton Waters wants to do is to have to put the Murdaugh trial back on in South Carolina. He put it on. He did a great job. He secured a conviction, and everyone wants to move on with their lives. But the actions of someone who should have simply been doing their job may have put this all in jeopardy. The other thing, and if you look at this, you may say, now we're splitting hairs. She's accused of telling the jurors when they went in to deliberate, no more smoke breaks for the smokers. This should be fast. Get this done, essentially. That is an inappropriate statement if it is meted out and true. And here's the deal. If you consider that statement in a vacuum, You may say, well, that's not a terribly big deal. I promise you this. If you look at that statement, she's rushing the deliberations. And you look at the statement where she's assessing the credibility of Alec Murdaugh and his entire team, telling them not to be fooled. You have to look at the totality of the circumstances here. Those are big time issues that have to be litigated. My prediction is there is going to be an evidentiary hearing on this motion. I cannot see how a judge can look at the nature of these claims and the affidavits that are affixed to that motion, even if it was just one juror. There's 4, ladies and gentlemen. That is a significant amount of jurors. There's going to be an evidentiary hearing. Now, I can't predict the outcome of that hearing, but I promise you this. Harpootlian and his team are going to fight like hell for a new trial, and Creighton Waters and his team are going to be fighting to protect the sanctity of Trial 1. We're going to keep you updated, and we're going to keep analyzing this case as it develops. Thank you.